Most people are living experiences they do not consciously want, and they do not understand why they cannot change. They want peace, but they keep reacting. They want discipline, but they keep drifting. They want connection, but they keep pushing people away. They want a different life, but somehow they keep becoming the same person again. And after enough years of this, most people eventually arrive at the same conclusion. Something must be wrong with me. But what if that isn't true? What if the problem is not brokenness, but unconscious identification with perception? In this video, I'm going to show you why people repeat patterns they consciously hate, why conscious desire and lived experience become disconnected, and why changing your life feels so difficult, and why the present moment may be the only place conscious participation can actually occur. Because once you understand this, you may stop blaming yourself for things you were never fully conscious of in the first place. And more importantly, you may finally understand why your life keeps becoming something different than what you consciously want. Reality exists as information, but human beings do not experience reality directly. We experience reality through perception. And perception is not neutral. Perception is shaped through conditioning, emotional experiences, memory, survival, identity, trauma, reinforcement, relationships, culture, repetition, and lived experience. In other words, before you were fully conscious of what was happening, perception was already learning how to interpret reality. And eventually, perception creates identity. Your fears, your emotional reactions, your insecurities, your coping mechanisms, your self-image, your habits. Most of these things were shaped before conscious participation fully came online. Then after enough repetition, perception turns those patterns into identity, and you begin calling that identity me. That is the human condition. The human condition is unconscious identification with perception, where most people become trapped. Because once consciousness becomes identified with perception, perception no longer feels like a process. It feels like reality itself. That's why people say things like, "This is just who I am. I've always been this way. I can't change. That's just my personality. This is how life is." But what they are often defending is not consciousness itself. They are identifying identity created through conditioned perception. Now, here's where this becomes deeply important. Perception acts from the past. Perception looks at memory, emotional reinforcement, conditioning, previous experiences, and identity. Then automatically determines what feels safe, what feels threatening, what feels natural, and what actions get repeated. That's why people repeat behaviors they consciously hate. That's why someone can want peace and still react, want discipline and still avoid, want love and still sabotage relationships, want confidence and still shrink, want change and still become the same version of themselves again. Because perception acts before conscious participation fully comes online. Most people are trying to create a new life through an identity built from the past. That is why they feel trapped. Not because they consciously want suffering, but because perception keeps recreating familiar experiences automatically. And the more those experiences repeat, the more perception reinforces itself. Perception shapes experience. Then experience reinforces perception. The loop keeps closing itself, and after enough years, people stop experiencing these patterns as conditioning. They experience them as self. Now, this is the part that changes everything. Consciousness participates differently than perception. Perception references the past to determine action. Consciousness participates through the present moment. That means conscious participation can only occur now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. The present moment is the only place where consciousness can actively participate in experience before perception completely dictates the next action automatically. And this is why the present moment matters so much. Not because it's spiritually trendy, not because present sounds peaceful, but because conscious participation only exists there. That means every moment contains two possibilities: unconscious repetition or conscious participation. This does not mean perception disappears. Perception will always exist. The goal is not to destroy perception, not to erase conditioning, not to become some emotionless, enlightened being. The goal is restoring conscious participation so perception is no longer the only force shaping lived experience. That is what the return actually is. The return restores conscious participation. And when conscious participation returns, something incredible begins to happen. People stop living entirely from conditioned identity. They begin consciously participating in their reactions, their decisions, their relationships, their actions, their future, and their created experience. For the first time, life stops feeling completely automatic. And maybe the most important realization of all of this: you are not broken. You are not broken. You are identified with perception. And if conscious participation can return, then your life does not have to continue repeating the past forever.